What's going on, everybody? Welcome to my film review for The Occupant, a 2020 Spanish psychological thriller written and directed by David Pastor and Alex Pastor, starring Javier Gutierrez as Javier Munoz and Mario Casas as Tomas. This film, wow, I gotta say, I'm gonna give it a positive review. There will be spoilers throughout my little discussion here, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, give it a watch, then come back and let me know what you think. But I will give it a thumbs up. It was a slow burn for sure. It was not perfect. It did have its issues, but yeah, let's get into it. So this film concerns a man that is filled with insecurity, filled with inadequacy, and he's watching his world, his so-called perfect life, and whatever he's envisioned that perfect life to be is fading away. And there's one particular metaphor early on in the film when they're forced to move from their more affluent apartment to something more lower income, and he's standing in his kitchen, and the kitchen sink tap is dripping, drip, drip, drip. This metaphor comes up later in the film, but let's get to it. So Javier Gutierrez, man, what an actor. This guy definitely carried the film for a large portion of it. And also Mario Casas was excellent as well. So Javier Gutierrez is the central protagonist of this film, and he's not such a good guy. He allows himself to become jealous and pathologically, taken over by his envy and his own insecurities and inadequacies lead him down a seriously sociopathic road in which he does things that, he totally forgoes his morality. And so let's get into it. The film starts, he's trying to get a job. He's an advertising executive, and he's been let go, and he's re-entering the job market as a middle-aged man in a younger game, in a more competitive, economic situation, a more competitive workforce, and he's struggling. He is struggling to get work, and he's unable to acquire a job, and essentially, he has to let go of his housekeeper at one point, and he's dropping her off, and she is crying and throws her keys at his face. And the next day, he picks up the keys and he realizes that he still has the buzzer and the apartment keys for their more expensive apartment, and he begins to very creepily live vicariously through this other man. So he starts observing this family. It's a young father, a mother, and a young daughter, and he starts spying on them. Now this is when things get very insidious and very creepy. So he starts, gathering information on this man, this family, and you can see the metaphor here in which symbolically he wishes that this was his perfect life. He wishes he could take the place of this younger man, in which he sees, his earlier days of, perceived power, of a perceived higher, point on the totem pole of the hierarchy in which society has deemed to him. Now, all of this is in his mind. He allows himself to go down a very dark road. So he eventually learns that Tomas is a recovering alcoholic, and he follows him to Alcoholics Anonymous, and he starts really manipulating and lying about not only his life, but his family. And Tomas is actually a good person, and he's willing to be a sponsor for Javier. And this is when things take a very dark turn, because he really starts messing up Tomas's life behind the scenes. He's pulling these strings and getting a rush, I believe, of power, because he's just pathologically taken over by his envy, his greed, and totally throws his morals out the window. The first thing he does is he begins breaking into their apartment, and Actually, one of the first things he does that's really nasty is kills the neighbor's dog, because when he goes into their apartment when they're both at work, the animal next door barks and barks, and the owner says there's nobody there. He's able to sneak in and sneak out. So he kills the dog. He leaves a piece of meat outside, assuming with poison. And that's the first time when I was like, okay, this guy is sick. And then he follows Tomas to Alcoholics Anonymous, and Tomas agrees to be a sponsor. And he screws up Tomas's schedule, trying to drive a wedge in between Tomas and his wife, who he did have a car accident with his wife and young daughter at one point. So she already has a sliver of doubt about her husband, a sliver of, accusatorial. She doesn't, she loves her husband, but she's easily manipulated into thinking that he is either drinking again or has relapsed. And Javier begins just messing with Tomas 100%. And the depths that he goes to is sickening. The film is slow. Don't get me wrong. It's a slow burn. It takes a while to develop, but it did keep me very transfixed. It did keep me hooked throughout the entire picture. The cinematography was very nice. Some of the plot points were a little heavy-handed. I did feel that the yard worker who works at the apartment building also turns out to be a psycho, in which he is like a pedophile, and Javier has this false sense of moral superiority to this man, when he is equally as nefarious and equally as horrible. So yeah, he manipulates the wife into believing that Tomas has gone off the rails. He begins lying. He crashes his car on purpose. At one point, calls up Tomas. Tomas comes to, help him get home. Pretends that he was drunk, of course. Spills liquor on Tomas's shirt. When Tomas goes home, the wife smells this on Tomas's shirt and says, but he's able to remedy that storm. But then she asks to meet with Javier, and Javier tells Lara, Tomas's wife, that in fact Tomas is the one that called him, and that Tomas had been drinking. And he took Tomas's phone and sent an email to himself saying, I need your help. I've totally gone off the rails here. I need your help. And Tomas, of course, is flabbergasted, and he confronts Javier. When Lara confronts Tomas, he confronts Javier and ends up exploding in a fit of rage and beating the bejesus out of him. And you can see why he's so angered, because Tomas lies right to his face at that point and says, what are you talking about? I didn't call you. You called me. And that's when Tomas realizes that this man is trying to ruin his life. But when Javier goes back to the apartment, Lara sees him and says, Tomas did this, didn't he? For telling me. And yeah, man, it's crazy. It's craziness. So I do think this was a solid film. I do. Definitely led by Javier Gutierrez's performance, for sure. He is so callous, manipulative, and menacing. And his sociopathic tendencies are spellbinding to watch on screen. Just the insidious nature of his actions. He ends up murdering 2 people. At least one. He orchestrates the murder of Tomas by his own wife. Tomas tells him at one point, divulges that he is extremely allergic to peanuts. So Javier gives the wife this pepper spray bottle, but he has tampered with it and put in, some peanut concentrate. So Tomas confronts Lara at one point and says, why was he here? Because Javier takes the family, for an outing. He says, oh, I can introduce the daughter to this famous ballerinist. And he takes a selfie with the wife and the daughter and the ballerinist, and he sends it to Tomas and saying, look at me, I'm taking care of your family. Knowing that this is going to absolutely enrage Thomas. And when Tomas goes home and confronts Lara about what's going on, because he's painting all these pictures of his mind of infidelity, even though this is all being orchestrated behind the scenes by this dastardly joker, Javier. He rightfully scares Lara, and you feel sympathetic for Tomas at that point. He can't control his emotions. He does lay hands on her, and she grabs the pepper spray that Javier gave her, sprays Tomas in the face, and of course he has an extreme allergic reaction and is not breathing. She calls Javier. He comes back, says, just stay in the room with the daughter. I'm going to call the police. I'm going to take care of everything. And he suffocates Tomas after whispering in his face, you don't deserve your family. I'm going to steal your family. And he does. He does just that. And it's just, yeah, I thought it was quite thought-provoking about psychopathy, envy, greed, the insidious nature of, there was a misogynistic element here. He believes he's entitled, and he's willing to do whatever he wants. He's willing to do whatever it takes to achieve this false sense of self-worth. And bringing that back to the metaphor about the water fountain in the kitchen at the beginning, the very final shot is he's in this new palace because Lara's father is a very well-to-do businessman, and Javier acquires a high-level position as an executive. And the final shot is he's standing in this house looking out the window, and the camera pans over to the faucet, and it's dripping. So interesting, man. Interesting film. I enjoyed it. So let me know what you all think. I know I don't usually do movie reviews or discussions on my channel. Most of you are here for music reviews and music reactions, but I'm definitely a film nut, and in this quarantine thing going on, I've been watching quite a few movies. So anyways, we'll let you all go. Peace out. Have a wonderful evening, day, and we'll see you soon.